In the year 1922, in a Paris still trembling from the echoes of the Great War, a legendary bookshop called Shakespeare and Company, run by an American woman named Sylvia Beach, published a book that would change the face of literature forever. The book was called Ulysses. Its author was a 40-year-old Irishman named James Joyce, a man with eyesight so poor he wore an eye patch and wrote with a giant red crayon on sheets of paper pinned to his wall. He was a man who ate with suspicion, feared dogs and thunderstorms, and who had dedicated the last 7 years of his life to constructing a book so vast, so complex, and so radically new that the literary world was still struggling to understand it a century later. This is not just a novel. This is an encyclopedia of styles, a symphony of voices, a cosmos compressed into the streets of a single city. Joyce, exiled from his native Ireland, carried Dublin within him like a secret map. He chose as his setting not ancient Greece, but the city he could never truly leave, recreating it street by street, pub by pub, stone by stone, from memory. He chose as his day not a day of mythical heroes, but an ordinary Thursday, June 16, 1904. And he chose as his hero not a warrior king, but a middle-aged Jewish advertising salesman named Leopold Bloom. The title is the key. Ulysses is the Latin name for Odysseus, the Greek hero who spent 10 years wandering the Mediterranean after the Trojan War, trying to return home to his faithful wife, Penelope. Joyce takes this ancient, epic framework and performs a miracle of inversion. The 24 books of Homer's Odyssey are compressed into 18 episodes. Bloom is Odysseus, the wanderer. Stephen Dedalus, a young, arrogant intellectual we first met in Joyce's earlier novel, A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, is Telemachus, the son searching for a spiritual father. And Molly Bloom, Leopold's wife, waiting at home in her bed, is Penelope, the unfaithful but ultimately life-affirming heart of the story. But here is the central, beautiful paradox. The framework is epic, but the content is breathtakingly ordinary. We spend an entire chapter watching Bloom eat a kidney for breakfast, savoring the fine tang of faintly scented urine. We listen to his thoughts as he sits on the toilet. We follow him to a funeral, to a newspaper office, to a pub, to a brothel. Nothing spectacular happens. There are no battles, no voyages, no monsters. The only monster is the mind itself, with its endless, swirling stream of consciousness, its memories, its desires, its petty anxieties and profound sorrows. The true journey of Ulysses is not across the sea, but into the interior of a single human soul. This is the magic of Joyce's stream of consciousness. We are not told what Bloom thinks, we are plunged directly into the river of his thoughts. A smell of frying liver reminds him of his father's suicide. A cloud passing over the sun makes him think of his infant son, Rudy, who died 11 days after birth. A pretty woman on the street awakens a quiet, harmless lust. The mind, in Ulysses, is not a tidy, logical place. It is a wilderness, a flood, a jazz improvisation. And Joyce, with his boundless linguistic genius, captures every note. This will not be a journey for the faint of heart. Joyce himself said, "I've put in so many enigmas and puzzles that it will keep the professors busy for centuries arguing over what I meant." But we are not here to solve every puzzle. We are here to listen. To listen to the music of a mind as it moves through a single day, and to discover that a single day, if you pay close enough attention, contains everything. Love and loss, birth and death, poetry and filth, the sublime and the ridiculous. It is all here, on the streets of Dublin, on June 16, 1904. So, take a breath. We are about to climb a mountain. And our first step is not with Bloom, but with a young man named Stephen Dedalus. We will meet him at the top of a Martello tower at dawn, looking out over the grey Irish Sea, a man haunted by the ghost of his dead mother and the wreckage of his brilliant potential. The journey of Ulysses begins not with an answer, but with a question. A question asked by a young man staring at the sea, wondering if his life will ever amount to anything. Let us begin with him. The novel does not begin with its hero, Leopold Bloom. It begins, as it must, with the sun. Stately, plump Buck Mulligan came from the stairhead, bearing a bowl of lather on which a mirror and a razor lay crossed. A yellow dressing gown, ungirdled, was sustained gently behind him by the mild morning air. He held the bowl aloft and intoned, in Troibo ad altar Dei. I will go up to the altar of God. The first words of the novel are a blasphemous parody of the Latin Mass, spoken by a medical student on the roof of a stone tower, shaving under the morning sun. Joyce wastes no time in announcing his intentions, the sacred and the profane, the body and the soul, the ancient and the modern, all tangled together in a single, sunlit moment. Stephen Dedalus, the young man we first met in a portrait of the artist as a young man, is already standing on the rooftop. He is lean, pale, dressed in morning black. The contrast between the two men is immediate and total. Mulligan is all flesh, laughter, and appetite. Stephen is all spirit, brooding intellect, and wounded pride. Mulligan looks at the sea and calls it, the snot-green sea, the scrotum-tightening sea. He is a jester, a blasphemer, a man who mocks everything, including his friend's deepest sorrow. He looks at Stephen and casually, cruelly, reminds him, your mother is dead. You could have knelt down and prayed for her. You refused. The ghost of Stephen's mother haunts this entire chapter. She died almost a year ago, and Stephen, in a crisis of faith, refused her dying wish that he kneel and pray for her soul. This refusal, this act of intellectual and spiritual rebellion, now tortures him. Mulligan, with his careless cruelty, keeps the wound open. Stephen looks at the sea, and the sight of it blends with the memory of his mother's deathbed. The water becomes a dull green mass of liquid, a vessel of guilt and grief. He is a young man of immense intellect, but he is paralyzed by the past, by his failures, by the weight of his own unspent potential. He is Telemachus, the son, waiting for a father, for a direction, for a way out of the tower that has become his prison. A third man is in the tower. Haynes, an Englishman, a visitor from Oxford. He is polite, wealthy, and utterly oblivious to the tensions he has walked into. He is the colonizer, the casual intruder, the man who dreams of shooting a black panther in the dead of night, and whose presence is a constant, grating reminder of English rule over Ireland. Stephen, the proud Irish intellectual, is forced to serve this man, to be a paid servant, in his own country. The dynamics in the tower are a microcosm of the political and spiritual state of Ireland itself, mocked by the irreverent Mulligan, patronized by the English Haynes, and trapped in the middle, the brooding, resentful Stephen. Stephen's pride is matched only by his poverty. He owes Mulligan money. He has no home of his own, having given up the key to his family's house. The key he now carries is the key to the tower, and Mulligan demands it back, accusing Stephen of being a freeloader. The conversation turns to money, to debts, to the petty humiliations of being a young man with a brilliant mind and empty pockets. For Stephen, every word from Mulligan is a lash. He is a king in exile, a prince without a kingdom, a scholar forced to beg. The morning that began with a parody of the Mass is becoming, for him, a very real and personal crucifixion. They leave the tower together, the three of them, to walk down to the water. Mulligan and Haynes swim. Stephen does not. He hates the water now, this snot-green sea that reminds him of death and of his mother's dissolving body. He feels a growing sense of alienation, a feeling that he does not belong anywhere, not with these men, not in this country, not even in his own skin. The chapter ends with Stephen watching Mulligan swim, watching the man who represents everything he despises, carefree physicality, unthinking laughter, a cheerful disregard for the soul's deep torment. As Mulligan splashes in the bay, Stephen makes a quiet, momentous decision. He will not return to the tower that night. He is homeless, rootless, a wanderer. His own private odyssey has begun. His tormentor has become the sea itself. His student has become a mockery. His country has become a cage. But the day is just beginning. And somewhere out there, in the streets of Dublin, a man named Leopold Bloom is also starting his morning. Two ships, a son and a father, are about to cross paths in the vast, indifferent ocean of the city. The odyssey of a single day has begun. Stephen Dedalus, the exile from the tower, now stands in another kind of confinement, a schoolroom. He is a teacher, a reluctant one, a paid servant of the state, just as he was a paid servant to Haynes. The air is thick with chalk dust and the smell of unwashed boys. Sunlight streams through the tall windows, illuminating a scene of profound intellectual disconnect. On one side, a young man, his mind a universe of scholastic philosophy, Aristotelian metaphysics, and the guilt-ridden poetry of his own soul. On the other, a class of wealthy, dull-eyed boys, carelessly dressed in their blazers, who represent the future ruling class of Ireland and who care for nothing but hockey and escaping this room. The chasm between them is the central, unspoken tragedy of the scene. He is teaching history, or rather, going through the motions of it. The topic is Pyrrhus, the ancient Greek king who won a battle but lost so many men that his victory became a byword for futility. Another victory like that and we are done for. The phrase echoes in Stephen's mind. He sees a parallel between Pyrrhus's hollow triumph and his own life. All his intellectual victories, his artistic ambitions, have led him here, to this dusty room, reciting dates to boys who do not listen. The grand narrative of history, he reflects, is just a series of such Pyrrhic victories, a nightmare from which he is trying to awake. A boy named Armstrong, the class clown, offers a moment of crude comic relief. He is caught eating a fig, and when Stephen asks him a question, he replies with a smirk that his father's name is, "My father is a gentleman." The other boys snigger. Stephen, with weary, practiced sarcasm, lets the moment pass. He feels no anger, only a vast, oceanic tiredness. These boys are the raw, unformed clay of humanity, and he is supposed to mold them. But he can barely hold his own life together. The bell rings for break, a merciful release. The boys clatter out of the room, leaving behind a silence that is both a relief and an accusation. The classroom empties. The silence descends like a shroud. Stephen is left alone with the debris of the lesson, chalk dust, scattered papers, the lingering smell of boys. The room, once a space of forced instruction, becomes a chamber of introspection. The sudden quiet is not peaceful. It is a vacuum, and into that vacuum rush all the anxieties that the noise had kept at bay. The memory of his mother, the betrayal of Mulligan, the aimless drift of his life. The schoolroom, once a cage, becomes a confessional. And the only confessor is himself. His solitude is interrupted. A knock on the door. An old, stooped man enters. This is Mr. Dedalus, the headmaster of the school, a Protestant, a Unionist, a man of rigid, unshakable opinions from another century. He shuffles into the room like a ghost of the British Empire, his presence a living fossil. He has come to pay Stephen his monthly wages, a meager sum, and to deliver a letter he has written to the newspapers about a foot-and-mouth disease outbreak in Irish cattle. He believes this letter, with his simple, pat solutions, will save the country. He is a man of immense self-regard and staggeringly narrow vision. For Stephen, he is both a comic figure and a terrifying omen of what a lifetime of unexamined certainty can do to a soul. Mr. Dedalus pays Stephen, coin by coin, lecturing him on the virtues of fiscal responsibility. A penny saved is a penny earned, he intones, a mantra of a bygone era. The coins clink onto the desk, a sound that is at once mundane and deeply symbolic. As Stephen pockets his meager salary, Dedalus launches into his favorite topic, the state of the world. He rails against the Jews, whom he blames for the decline of England, spouting anti-Semitic diatribes with the calm assurance of a man who has never questioned his own prejudices. Stephen, a young man who has spent years studying the Jewish-born St. Thomas Aquinas, listens in pained silence. The irony is thick enough to choke on. History, for Dedalus, is a simple, righteous path towards progress. For Stephen, it is a labyrinth of horrors. Stephen, unable to contain his philosophical nature any longer, corrects the old man. History, he says, not with anger, but with a quiet, definitive weariness, is a nightmare from which I am trying to awake. Mr. Dedalus, startled by this abstract pronouncement, tries to brush it aside with a platitude. He believes God is the ultimate source of history, and that history moves towards the manifestation of God. The chasm between the two men is now unbridgeable. One sees a divine comedy, the other a godless nightmare. Stephen, holding his letter to the press, the letter of a man whose worldview he finds utterly repugnant, takes his leave. He is an instrument of a wisdom he despises. Walking away from the school, Stephen is left alone with the old man's words echoing in his skull. He walks down the tree-lined path, the sound of the boys' hockey sticks a distant clatter. He thinks of the coins in his pocket, of the letter in his hand, of the profound and terrible weight of the past. He thinks of the Jews, the wandering tribe, the merchants, the prophets, the chosen and the persecuted. He sees, with a sudden, piercing clarity, a link between them and himself. He, too, is a wanderer. He, too, is an exile in his own land. He, too, carries a history that is both a burden and a source of terrible, fragile beauty. The chapter ends not with a resolution, but with a transformation. The nightmare of history is not over, but Stephen has found, in his own loneliness, a strange and unlikely companionship. Stephen Dedalus walks alone. He has left the school, left the tower, left the company of men. He now walks along Sandymount Strand, a long, wind-swept beach on the edge of Dublin. The tide is out, leaving a vast, glistening expanse of wet sand, riddled with the tiny holes of buried creatures. The sea stretches out to the horizon, a grey, shifting, protean mass. This is his classroom now. And the lesson is one of pure perception. He closes his eyes and tries to understand the world not through sight, but through sound. He hears the ineluctable modality of the audible, the rhythmic crunch of his boots on the sand, the distant hiss of the waves. He is testing the limits of his own senses, trying to see, as he puts it, the allmoldy, the formless, the protean. The world is not a fixed thing, he realizes, but a river of sensations, constantly changing, constantly reborn. His thoughts drift from perception to memory. He recalls a recent trip to Paris, his failed attempt to become an artist, to escape the nets of family, church, and state that he had sworn to fly past. He had dreamed of being a voice, a writer, a creator. Instead, he was called back from the Latin Quarter by a telegram, "Another dying. Come home. Father." The raw, ungrammatical words of his father's message are branded into his mind. He returned not as a conquering artist, but as a grieving son, and he refused his mother's dying wish. Paris, the city of lights, is now just another ghost, another failed dream, another strand of memory woven into the tapestry of his guilt. The sand beneath his feet is Dublin, inescapable Dublin. He stops walking and shuts his eyes once more, determined to break through the tyranny of the visible. He listens. He becomes pure hearing. He hears the sound of his own blood rushing in his ears, the catalectic rhythm of the waves on the shore. The world, stripped of sight, is a world of rhythm. He thinks of the tides, of the moon, of the great, cosmic rhythms that govern all matter. He thinks of a drowned man, a corpse rolling in the murky water off the coast of Dublin, a recurring nightmare image in his mind. The sea is not just a beautiful seascape, it is a grave, a repository of secrets, an ineluctable modality. The sound of the tide is a clock, ticking away not just the minutes, but the eons. He opens his eyes. The spell is broken. The visual world rushes back in. His mind, ever restless, shifts to the past, to memories of his uncle's house, of his aunt's kitchen, the smell of bread, the sound of a piano. He thinks of his own name, Dedalus, the fabulous artificer, the mythical Greek craftsman who built the labyrinth and then, imprisoned within it, built wings from wax and feathers to escape. But what wings has he built? What labyrinth has he escaped? He is walking on a beach, not flying. He is full of thoughts, but they are a labyrinth, not a key. The mythical name is a cruel joke, a constant reminder of his own paralysis. Stephen, the heir of the great artificer, feels utterly, profoundly earthbound. A dog runs across the sand, a living, energetic creature, a stark contrast to Stephen's cerebral paralysis. It is followed by its owners, two figures, a man and a woman, their voices carried by the wind. Stephen observes them, the cocklepickers, as they dig in the sand for shellfish. They are part of the real world, the world of labor, hunger, and simple, physical existence. He feels a pang of envy. He sits on a rock and, overcome by a sudden need to create, to leave some tangible trace of his thoughts, he tears a piece of paper from Mr. Deasy's letter. On the blank corner, he scribbles a few lines of verse. He comes, pale vampire, through storm his eyes, his bat sails bloodying the sea, mouth to her mouth's kiss. A fragment. A beginning. A small, fragile act of rebellion against the formlessness of the world. He finishes his poem and, feeling a quiet sense of having, for a fleeting moment, imposed some order on the chaos, he leans back and looks at the scene around him. The tide is beginning to turn. The vast, open beach he walked on is slowly being reclaimed by the sea. The very ground of his long meditation is impermanent. He knows he will not return to the tower tonight. He is rootless, homeless, a drifting vessel on the currents of a single day. The knowledge is not a comfort, but it is, for now, a truth he can bear. He gathers his things, his ashplant cane, his hat, and walks away, leaving the rock empty, leaving the poem behind on the sand. Mr. Leopold Bloom ate with relish the inner organs of beasts and fowls. He liked thick giblet soup, nutty gizzards, a stuffed roast heart, liver slices fried with crust crumbs, fried hencods roes. Most of all he liked grilled mutton kidneys, which gave to his palate a fine tang of faintly scented urine. The first sentence of this chapter is a manifesto, a declaration of a new kind of hero. We are no longer in the labyrinthine mind of Stephen Dedalus, brooding on the shore. We are in a warm, fragrant kitchen on Eccles Street, and we are meeting a man who is unashamedly, gloriously, a creature of the body. Bloom is not a lofty intellectual or a tortured artist. He is a man who loves food, and the prose celebrates that love with a sensual, almost obscene, delight. The kidney is his breakfast, his small, private ritual of pleasure. As it sizzles in the pan, its smell fills the kitchen, a fine tang that anchors him to the present moment. He is a man of simple, honest appetites, and Joyce refuses to mock him for it. Instead, the narrative elevates this act of cooking a kidney into something almost sacred. It is Bloom's communion, his Eucharist, a moment of peace before the chaos of the day. He thinks of the butcher, Dlugax, from whom he bought the kidney, and the thought leads him, as all thoughts lead in this book, on a wandering path through memory and sensation. This is the essence of Bloom, a man for whom the world is not a system to be understood, but a feast to be tasted. He leaves the kidney to cook and moves through his house, a quiet, solitary figure. Upstairs, his wife, Molly, is still in bed, a presence felt rather than seen. He picks up the morning mail from the hall floor. There is a letter for him, and a letter for her. The letter for Molly is from her concert manager, Blazes Boylan, a flashy, confident man whose name will soon become a thorn in Bloom's heart. He brings the letter up to her, knocks softly on the bedroom door, and hands it to a hand that emerges from the tangle of sheets. He knows, on some level, what that letter signifies. He knows what will happen later that afternoon, at 4:30. But he does not say a word. He retreats back downstairs to his kidney, the unspoken truth hanging in the air like the scent of cooking meat. This is the quiet tragedy at the heart of the Bloom household. A bed where love has turned to a polite, distant courtesy. Back in the kitchen, Bloom sits down to eat. The kidney is perfect, and he savors every bite. As he eats, he reads the letter from his own daughter, Millie, who has just turned 15 and is away from home, studying to be a photographer. Her youthful, vibrant voice, full of slang and descriptions of a young boy who teases her, fills the kitchen. It is a lifeline of innocent affection in a house starved of it. He smiles at her words, and for a moment, the shadow of Molly's infidelity and the pain of his dead son recede. Millie is the Bloom of his life, the one uncomplicated love he has left. He finishes his tea, wipes his mustache, and the simple, nourishing ritual is complete. The body is fed. The day can begin. Nature calls, and Bloom obeys. He heads to the outhouse, a small, wooden shed at the back of the garden. Here, Joyce performs another revolutionary act. He allows his hero to defecate. Bloom sits in the reek of the privy, and reads an old copy of Titbits magazine. His mind wanders to his garden, to the manure he will use to fertilize his plants, to the cycle of life and death. There is no high philosophy here, just the simple, honest, bodily reality of being a living creature. Nothing is too lowly for literature, Joyce seems to say. The entire human experience, from the highest thoughts of art to the most basic functions of the body, is worthy of our attention. Bloom wipes himself, using the story he was reading to do so, a final, perfect, serious comic touch. The body has been honored, tended to, and now the man is ready to face the world. The ritual is over. A great quietness hangs over the house as Bloom steps out of the outhouse and back into the world. He is a man who has honored his body, his memories, and his sorrows, all in the space of a single hour. The shadow of the day ahead, the funeral, the meeting, the certain betrayal at 4:30 looms before him. But for now, he is grounded. He has tasted the tang of the kidney. He has read his daughter's words. He has felt the sun on his face. He is not a mythical hero. He is not a warrior king. He is Leopold Bloom, a man in full, and his odyssey through the streets of Dublin is about to begin. Bloom walks. He has left the quiet sanctuary of his kitchen and stepped into the streets of Dublin. The city is waking up around him, a living organism of trams, carts, and pedestrians. He walks with a steady, unhurried pace, a man with time on his hands. As he walks, his mind is already adrift, a ship slipping its moorings. He thinks of the east, of the languorous, drowsy lands of Lotus Eaters, where men forget their homes and their duties, lulled into a sweet, narcotic stupor. There is something in Bloom that longs for that forgetfulness, a desire to escape the sharp edges of his life, his father's suicide, his son's death, his wife's impending infidelity. The city is his Mediterranean, and he is willing to be seduced by its sights and smells. His first stop is the post office. Bloom, we learn, has a secret. He maintains a correspondence under a false name, Henry Flower, ESQ. It is a small, harmless deception, a tiny escape valve from his life as Leopold Bloom. He collects a letter from the post office, addressed to his pseudonym, from a woman named Martha Clifford. The letter is a flirtatious, slightly silly, typist-written billet doux. She calls him naughty boy and asks him about his wife. The whole affair is a fantasy, a whispered secret in a brown envelope. But for Bloom, it is a tiny, precious assertion of a self that is not just a cuckolded husband, a grieving father, a wandering Jew. He tucks the letter away, and the secret, like the flower his pseudonym suggests, blooms quietly within him. The scent of the letter, a faint perfume, lingers with him as he walks. It blends with the other smells of the city, the horse dung on the streets, the fresh bread from a bakery, the smoky tang of coal fires. Smell, for Bloom, is a gateway to memory and emotion. He finds himself drifting towards a church, All Hallows, and decides to step inside. A Catholic service is in progress. He does not believe, but he is fascinated by the ritual, the stupefying power of the Latin Mass, the way the incense and the chanting create a sensual, hypnotic atmosphere. The priest intones the words of the Eucharist, and Bloom, the unbeliever, watches the faithful receive the wafer. He thinks about the body of Christ, about the simple, physical act of eating, about his own body. The sacred and the profane, the spiritual and the digestive, are all one in his mind. The priest performs the ritual of purification, washing his hands and praying for cleanliness. Bloom watches, and his mind, ever grounded, thinks about the practicalities of the body. Cleanliness is next to godliness, he muses. The service ends, and the congregation shuffles out. Bloom lingers for a moment, allowing the peace of the empty church to settle over him. He is not a Catholic, not a Protestant, not a Jew who practices his faith. He is a congregation of one, a man who finds his religion not in doctrine, but in the quiet spaces between the noise of the world. The empty church, smelling of cold incense and extinguished candles, is, for this moment, his temple. Back on the street, the warm, narcotic spell of the church is quickly broken. Life, in all its chaotic, commercial, and bodily urgency, rushes back in. He thinks about his next task. He needs to order a lotion for Molly, a skin cream. The thought of her body, her white skin, her opulent curves, mixes in his mind with the distant, painful knowledge of what will happen at 4:30. He thinks about Blazes Boylan, the man who will call on her, and a wave of dull, resigned sadness washes over him. But he does not let it consume him. He is a practical man. There is a lotion to order. He heads to the chemist's shop, Swenny's, to buy a simple bar of lemon soap. The world of scent and skin and chemistry offers a small, tangible comfort. He leaves the shop with the sweet, clean scent of lemon soap in his pocket, a small, affordable luxury. The soap is a talisman, a piece of cleanliness and order in a day that feels increasingly messy and out of his control. His mind drifts again, this time to the idea of baths. He imagines the cool, enveloping water, the quiet, the solitude. It is another form of lotus eating, a way to escape the wear and tear of existence. The thought of the bath becomes a promise he makes to himself, a reward for navigating the hours ahead. He will go to the Turkish baths later. For now, he walks on, the soap in his pocket, the secret letter in his breast, a man of hidden comforts and quiet, unshakable humanity. The carriage rattles through the grey streets of Dublin. Inside, four men sit in uneasy, formal silence. Leopold Bloom, Martin Cunningham, Jack Power, and Simon Dedalus, Stephen's father, are on their way to Glasnevin Cemetery to bury a man named Paddy Dignam. Death, the great leveller, has gathered these disparate souls into a single, creaking box. The mood is somber, punctuated by awkward small talk about tramlines and the deceased's family. But beneath the forced civility, each man is alone with his own thoughts, his own private anxieties about the body in the coffin ahead of them and the fate of their own mortal bodies. The carriage is a microcosm of society facing the inevitable, and the journey is a slow, deliberate descent into the kingdom of the dead. They pass through the streets, and the living world goes on, indifferent. Children play, trams clatter, a girl laughs. Bloom watches it all through the carriage window, his mind oscillating between the grim present and the raw, unhealed wound of his past. He sees a child and thinks of his own son, little Rudy, who died 11 days after his birth, over a decade ago. The image is vivid, painful, a ghost that never leaves his side. The carriage passes Blazes Boylan, Molly's lover, flamboyant and full of life, a stark, cruel contrast to the cargo of death Bloom is riding with. Bloom, startled, points him out, then immediately regrets it. The rival, the living, virile man, is a sharp splinter in the skin of this funeral day. The conversation turns, as it must, to the subject of death. They speak of sudden deaths, of a man who was struck by a falling brick, of a woman who died of a broken heart. Simon Dedalus, a man of maudlin sentiment and sharp wit, tells a story of a man who, in his grief, tried to climb into his wife's grave. The anecdote is both tragic and absurd, a perfect Irish blend of sorrow and dark comedy. The men in the carriage listen, each processing the tale through the filter of his own character, Cunningham with stoic silence, Power with polite sympathy, Bloom with analytical, scientific curiosity. What happens to the body? How does the heart break? He is an atheist in a death trap, seeking not spiritual comfort, but physical, tangible facts. They arrive at the cemetery gates. The carriage slows, and the iron railings, the crosses, the yew trees, all the paraphernalia of eternal rest, come into view. The hearse ahead of them stops, and the men disembark, stiff and awkward. They join the procession of mourners, a small, black-clad snake winding its way through the graveyard. Bloom reads the names on the tombstones as he walks. He thinks of his own father, a suicide, buried not in consecrated ground, but somewhere outside the walls. The thought is a dull, persistent ache. He remembers his father's last letter, the rambling, desperate words of a man about to take his own life. The past is not a foreign country, it is a landscape he is forced to walk through every day. At the graveside, the priest performs the rites. The Latin words, the "I am the resurrection and the life," drone on, a formulaic comfort for those who believe. Bloom stands at the edge, an observer, an outsider. He does not pray. His mind, ever practical, wanders to the grim mechanics of what is happening beneath the earth. He thinks about the decomposition of the body, the clacking of bones, the eventual return to dust. He thinks about how the cemetery is full of rotten matter, a vast, communal recycling plant for the dead. It is not a cynical thought, but a realistic one. This, for Bloom, is the true communion, not of saints, but of atoms. The body of Paddy Dignam will, in time, nourish the grass that feeds the cattle that feed the living. The cycle is grotesque, perhaps, but it is also comforting in its vast, cosmic indifference. The service ends. The first clods of earth thud heavily onto the wooden coffin. The sound is final, brutal, and irrevocable. The mourners begin to disperse, their duty done. Bloom, however, lingers. He finds himself standing next to an overweight, wheezing gravedigger, a man as much a part of this underworld as the worms and the clay. The man is a living memento mori, a reminder of the body's inevitable decay. Bloom feels a strange, profound connection to this gravedigger, a fellow traveler on the road to dust. They share a brief, wordless moment of understanding. The king and the clown, the rich man and the pauper, all end up here, equal in the democracy of the grave. The thought, rather than being terrifying, offers Bloom a strange, humanistic comfort. The ordeal is over. Bloom puts on his hat, squares his shoulders, and begins the walk back towards the land of the living. The air feels cleaner, the light, even though still gray, seems a little brighter. He has walked with death, breathed its cold air, and remembered his own dead. He has carried his grief and his dignity with him. But the day is not over. The world of the living calls to him, with its newspapers, its lunches, its music, and its quiet, heartbreaking betrayals. He leaves the city of the dead behind and walks back through the cemetery gates, a quiet, resilient Ulysses, journeying on through the labyrinth of a single day. The chapter opens not with a character, but with the city itself. Trams clatter through the heart of Dublin, their bells ringing, their wheels grinding on the tracks. The sound is the pulse of a modern city, a machine-age rhythm. Before any words are spoken, Joyce places us firmly in the world of noise, motion, and mechanical energy. This is the realm of Aeolus, the god of the winds, and the chapter itself is a collection of hot air, of rhetoric, of speeches that blow through the corridors of power without ever quite landing. The very structure of the text is broken up by newspaper-style headlines, a typographical innovation that mocks the journalistic pretensions of the characters we are about to meet. We are in the offices of the Freeman's Journal and the Evening Telegraph. Bloom is here, dressed in his dark suit, trying to secure an advertisement for his client, a merchant named Keyes. He moves through the bustling office with a quiet, professional determination. He is an ad man, a canvasser, a man who deals in the practical magic of persuasion. But the newspapermen he encounters, led by the pompous editor Miles Crawford, are not interested in the quiet business of commerce. They are captivated by the grand, empty gestures of politics and oratory. They are drunk on rhetoric. Bloom is a man of substance in a world that worships wind. The conversation turns, as it always does, to the art of oratory. Crawford, a frustrated impresario of language, holds forth on the great Irish orators of the past. He invokes the ghost of John F. Taylor, a barrister famous for a speech he gave in defense of the Irish language. Crawford wants someone to write something about it, to capture that fleeting moment of rhetorical glory. He is a man in love with the memory of great speeches, a hoarder of dead eloquence. The irony, which Joyce wields like a scalpel, is that all this talk about great speeches is itself just more hot air, a form of linguistic paralysis disguised as passion. Into this smoky, masculine enclave walks a different kind of creature. Stephen Dedalus, fresh from his meditative walk on the beach, arrives with a letter from Mr. D.C. He is clean, pale, and detached, a figure of pure intellect amidst the bluster. The newspapermen, with their crude, backslapping humor, try to engage him, but he is on a different plane entirely. They drag him off to a pub, and there, the talk continues to swirl around him, a fog of opinions and anecdotes. Bloom, having finished his business, quietly slips away. The two men, the father and the son, the hero and the artist, cross paths for a brief, unremarkable moment. They do not meet. The city is not yet ready for their meeting. The talk of rhetoric reaches a bizarre, almost surreal climax. A story is told, the 1882 Phoenix Park murders, when a British lord and his secretary were stabbed to death by Irish nationalists. But the story they tell is not about the victims or the politics. It's about a bystander, a croppy boy, who was caught up in the chaos. The anecdote is fragmented, half-remembered, a dark legend of Dublin streets. The men recount it with a ghoulish, theatrical relish. It is the ultimate example of their art, the transmutation of brutal, senseless violence into a piece of entertaining, meaningless, windy rhetoric. Before Stephen is led to the pub, he tries to tell his own story. He gathers the newspapermen and begins to recite a short, dark parable he has composed, a Pisgah site of Palestine. It is a story of two Dublin Vestal virgins who climb Nelson's Pillar to see the Promised Land. Their view is not of the Holy Land, but of the sprawling, grey, familiar city of Dublin itself. The Promised Land is here, under their feet, and they are too blind to see it. The newspapermen, of course, are baffled. They can appreciate a story about a murder, a spectacle with blood and villains. But a quiet, symbolic tale of spiritual paralysis. It is a waste of their precious, windy time. The episode ends, appropriately, on the street. The clang of the trams, the endless, circular journey of the city's mechanical arteries. A newsboy runs past, shouting a headline. The wind blows through the streets, stirring up dust and scraps of paper. A single, powerful image closes the chapter. Scythed car, a large, heavy street-sweeping cart, makes its slow, deliberate way down the street. It is a primitive, clumsy machine, but it serves as a final, visual metaphor. The great, hot air of the politicians, the orators, the journalists, all the windy rhetoric of the day, will ultimately be swept away. The street will be cleaned. The day will move on. And Bloom, the quiet, unassuming ad man, is already walking, thinking about lunch. The tram from the newspaper office has dropped Bloom in the heart of the city, and the first thing that assails him is not a thought, but a smell. The rich, meaty aroma of grilled beef from a nearby restaurant wafts out onto the street, and his body responds before his mind can catch up. He is hungry. The kidney was hours ago, and the day has been long. The hunger is not just an emptiness, it is a primal, driving force that will shape his journey for the next hour. The Lestrygonians, in Homer's Odyssey, were a tribe of giant cannibals who devoured Odysseus's men. Joyce's version is a symphony of eating, a meditation on the fact that we are all, in our own way, consumers of life, driven by the relentless demands of the body. He walks, and the city is a menu. Every shop window, every passing cart, every advertisement speaks to him of food. He passes a fancy grocer's, and his eyes feast on tins of sardines, jars of glistening olives, baskets of fresh bread. But he is a man of modest means and specific tastes. He is repulsed by the sight of pent-up city cattle being herded towards the slaughterhouse, their hot, steaming bodies a premonition of the plate. He thinks of the brutal, mechanical efficiency of the modern food chain. He is not a vegetarian, but he is a deeply empathetic man. The sight of the doomed animals unsettles him, and he decides he cannot eat meat today. The thought of the hot-reeking flanks is too much. He will have something lighter, something vegetarian. The body's desires are complex, filtered through a sensitive mind. His thoughts, as always, wander. From the cattle, he thinks of the great mythological cattle raids of ancient Ireland, the epic poems like the Táin Bua Cailnge. He then drifts to a memory of a picnic with Molly on Howth Head, a day of love and passion, her throwing a piece of seed cake at him, her laughter. But the pleasant memory is immediately tainted. He thinks of Blazes Boylan, the man who will call on her this afternoon. The hunger in Bloom's mind is now of a different kind, a hunger for a lost love, a jealousy that gnaws at him. He pushes the thought away. He must eat. The body's primary need is a useful anchor against the drift of painful thoughts. He finally arrives at his destination, Davy Byrne's pub. It is a moral pub, a quiet, respectable establishment, not a place of roaring drunks but of sober conversation and good, plain food. He slides into a seat and orders a gorgonzola sandwich and a glass of burgundy. The choice is specific, almost ritualistic. The sharp, creamy cheese, the full-bodied red wine. It is a meal for a civilized man, a far cry from the inner organs of his breakfast. He spreads the cheese on the bread and takes a bite, and for a moment, there is nothing in the world but the taste. He drinks the burgundy, and a warmth spreads through him. This is a small, private Eucharist, a communion with the simple, good things of the earth. The cheese and wine work their magic. The wine is a pleasant missionary, sending a warm, rational light into the dark corners of his mind. He looks around the pub. He sees an acquaintance, a man named Nosey Flynn, who comes over to chat. Flynn is a gossip, a purveyor of pointless Dublin news. He asks about Molly, about her upcoming concert tour. Bloom gives polite, guarded answers. He knows the real story behind Flynn's innocent questions. The warmth of the wine allows him to face the charade with a quiet, almost philosophical detachment. He even manages a small, private joke to himself as Flynn mentions Blazes Boylan, "I know. That's the fellow. That's the man who organized the tour." The sharp edge of jealousy is momentarily dulled by the wine and the food. The body is soothed, and the mind can rest. Nosy Flynn moves on to find juicier gossip elsewhere. Bloom is left alone again with the dregs of his wine. The pub is quiet. He watches a couple of flies buzzing on the windowpane, their small, frantic lives a mirror of his own thoughts. He thinks about the nature of love. Is it just a form of hunger? A biological drive dressed up in poetry? His thoughts are melancholic but not despairing. The wine has given him a gentle, philosophical cushion against the harshness of the day. He has fed his body, and in doing so, he has nourished his soul. He is ready to face the afternoon. He pays his bill, quietly, without fuss, and steps back out into the noise and light of the Dublin streets. The lunchtime crowds are thinning. The day is moving on. The warm, bodily world of food and wine is gone. We have ascended, or perhaps retreated, into the cool, hushed, book-lined sanctuary of the National Library of Ireland. This is the realm of pure intellect, a temple of ideas. And at its center, holding court, is Stephen Dedalus. He is not alone. He is surrounded by some of the most learned men in Dublin, the poet and mystic A.E. George Russell, the gentle librarian Thomas Lister, and the critic John Eglinton. They have gathered to discuss high art, literature, and specifically, the greatest writer in the English language, William Shakespeare. The air is thick with erudition, with Latin tags and obscure allusions. The noise of the city is a forgotten memory. Here, the only battles are fought with words. Stephen, the youngest man in the room, has come to do intellectual battle. He has been asked to explain his own highly original, and deeply personal, theory about Shakespeare. He begins, and the room falls silent. His argument is not dry or academic. It is a work of creative genius in itself. He believes that the key to understanding everything Shakespeare wrote, every sonnet, every play, is to be found in a single, traumatic event in the playwright's own life, his marriage to an older woman named Anne Hathaway. She seduced him when he was just 18, and Stephen argues that Shakespeare never forgave her. He spent the rest of his life relitigating that original betrayal through his characters. Hamlet, Othello, Lear, they are all, in their essence, William Shakespeare, the wounded husband. The other men are skeptical, even hostile. A.E., the mystical poet, dismisses the theory as mere biographical speculation. He argues that art exists on a higher, spiritual plane, separate from the grubby facts of a writer's life. John Eglinton, the critic, sees it as a clever but ultimately unprovable fantasy. Stephen is caught between them, like Odysseus sailing between the monstrous cliff of Scylla and the devouring whirlpool of Charybdis. On one side is the Scylla of pure, rigid, dogmatic fact. On the other is the Charybdis of vague, disembodied, mystical idealism. He must navigate a middle course. His point is far more profound: the life of the artist is the raw material for the art. The pain, the love, the betrayal, it doesn't stay in the past. It is transfigured, made eternal, through the magic of language. As he speaks, Stephen's argument takes a darker, more personal turn. He is no longer just talking about Shakespeare. He is talking about himself. He speaks of the note of banishment that echoes through Shakespeare's plays, the sense of exile and loss. Stephen, the exile from the Martello Tower, the man who refused his dying mother, the artist trapped in a country that feels like a prison, knows this feeling intimately. He is using Shakespeare as a mask, a fabulous artificer, to explore his own wounded soul. The young man in the play Hamlet, he argues, is not just a prince. He is a ghost of Shakespeare's own dead son, Hamnet. The ghost of the dead son haunts the father, and the father, through art, gives the son a form of eternal life. The dead Rudy Bloom, the dead Hamnet Shakespeare, the spiritually dead Stephen Dedalus, they all blur into a single, tragic figure. The discussion moves to the text of Hamlet itself. Stephen focuses on the character of the ghost, the restless spirit of Hamlet's father who demands vengeance. But Stephen asks a startling question: who is the ghost? Is it truly a spirit from purgatory, or is it something else? Stephen argues that the ghost is, in a profound psychological sense, a manifestation of Shakespeare himself. Shakespeare, the father, speaking from the grave of his own creation. And if the ghost is the father, then Hamlet, the son, is Shakespeare's dead son, Hamnet, given a voice through art. The relationships are not literal, but spiritual and artistic. The library room itself feels haunted by the power of this idea, a séance conducted with words. The intellectual performance is over. Stephen has spoken his piece, weaving a brilliant, intricate, and deeply personal web of meaning. The scholars are impressed, bewildered, and perhaps a little unsettled. They have been given a masterclass in how to read, not just Shakespeare, but literature itself. But as the group breaks up, a quiet, almost comical moment occurs. An attendant approaches AE with a note. It's from a Mr. Lister, the very librarian who was listening to Stephen's grand theory. The message is utterly mundane: the Archbishop of Dublin is in the building. The high priests of art must now make way for a high priest of religion. Stephen gathers his notes, a quiet, sardonic smile on his lips. The world, in all its absurd, hierarchical reality, intrudes once again. He has navigated the intellectual whirlpool and the rock, and survived. The episode opens with a powerful figure moving through the city. Father John Conmee, a Jesuit priest, steps off a tram and begins a walk through the streets of North Dublin. He is a man of immense, unshakable authority and charm, a representative of the church that still holds Ireland in its grip. He greets the poor, blesses children, and thinks kindly thoughts about the souls of the black and brown children in foreign missions. But his benevolence is patronizing, a product of the very system that Stephen is trying to escape. He moves through the city like a sleek, spiritual prince, observing the world from the comfortable height of his collar, utterly unaware of the complex, tortured lives being lived in the streets around him. His journey is the first thread in a vast, complex narrative tapestry. The narrative now fractures. Joyce's camera eye detaches itself from any single protagonist and becomes a roving, godlike lens, swooping through the streets of Dublin. We are shown a series of short, disconnected vignettes, each one capturing a different life, a different corner of the city. A one-legged sailor crutches his way down a narrow lane, his warm metal glinting. Two young women, their heads together, share a secret on the steps of a bank. A plump, bearded man in a carriage reads a newspaper, a look of bovine contentment on his face. They are all strangers to each other, yet they are all citizens of the same sprawling, chaotic, interconnected organism that is Dublin. The wandering rocks, in the Odyssey, were clashing rocks that crushed ships. Here, they are the citizens themselves, moving on their own trajectories, sometimes colliding, mostly just passing by. Amidst the chaos, we catch a glimpse of Leopold Bloom. He is browsing the books at a small, outdoor book cart. He is looking for something, a specific book for his wife, Molly. He picks up Sweets of Sin, a racy novel, and reads a few pages. His thoughts are tender, melancholy. He knows about her affair. He knows the book is a silly, sensual fantasy. But it is a gift, an offering. He buys it, tucking the brown paper-wrapped package under his arm. It is a small act of love, a quiet attempt to reach across the growing distance between them, using a story of Sweets of Sin as a fragile bridge. The vignettes grow more surreal. A man in a sandwich board walks by, advertising a restaurant. He is a human billboard, a walking piece of commerce. A string of schoolboys, let out of class, swarm down the street like a flock of starlings, their noise and energy a sudden, chaotic eruption. Lord John Henry Cavendish Bentinck, a visiting British dignitary, is driven through the streets in a carriage, a symbol of the empire that looms over the city. The mundane and the grotesque, the powerful and the powerless, are all woven together in this extraordinary tapestry of urban life. Joyce's Dublin is not a background. It is a living, breathing character, full of noise, smell, and constant, unpredictable motion. And then, at the very heart of this chapter, the novel's two central figures, the father and the son, Bloom and Stephen, almost cross paths. They are seen, from a distance, by a third party. Stephen, walking with his arm in the arm of his sister, Dilly, is speaking to her with an uncharacteristic tenderness. Bloom, unseen by them, is on the other side of the street, holding his book. For a fleeting, suspenseful moment, they are within sight of each other. But they do not meet. The city, like a mischievous god, keeps them apart. The intersection of their lives is a promise deferred, a meeting that must wait for a more significant, more powerful moment later in the day. The final image of the chapter is one of the most memorable and bizarre in the entire novel. The viceregal cavalcade, a grand procession of horse-drawn carriages carrying the Lord Lieutenant of Ireland, the king's representative, makes its way through the streets. It is a symbol of official power, of pomp and circumstance. And as it passes, Joyce shows us the reaction of every character we have met in the chapter. Some bow. Some look on in indifference. Some, unseen, perform private, rebellious acts. The cavalcade is a unifying force, a single event that ties all the disparate, wandering rocks of Dublin together for one brief, ironic moment. The empire passes through. The city watches. And life, in all its messy, human, individual glory, goes on. The chapter opens not with a person, but with an overture. A cascade of words, a musical prelude made of fractured, rhythmic phrases, bronze by gold heard the hoof irons. The clinking of glasses, the rustle of a garter, the clip-clop of a horse outside, the distant bell of a tram, all these sounds of the Ormond Hotel bar are woven into the prose itself. Joyce is announcing his intention. This will not be a traditional narrative. It will be a fuga per canonum, a musical composition in words. The sirens of the title are two barmaids, Miss Lydia Dowse and Miss Mina Kennedy. They are the bronze and the gold, the seductresses of this waterfront establishment. And the song they will sing is not one of mythical destruction, but of flirtation, of empty charm, and of the quiet, aching pain of a man who watches from the sidelines. Leopold Bloom enters, as if seeking refuge. He has had his lunch and his funeral. Now, he is drawn to the sounds of the piano and the promise of a quiet drink. He spots a friend from the funeral, Richie Golding, and sits down with him at a table by the door. He is careful to sit with his back to the room, half hiding from the watchful eyes of the barmaids. He is not here to be seduced. He is here to observe, to listen, and to wait out the long, tense afternoon before his wife's rendezvous. The bar is filled with acquaintances. Stephen Dedalus is at the piano, and a young dandy named Lenehan is flirting with Miss Dowse. The stage is set. The song is about to begin. The music starts. Stephen Dedalus, a man of immense, wasted talent and booming voice, sits at the piano. He sings, and the room is transfixed. The song is an old Irish air, a lament for love lost, and his voice is a magnificent instrument. As he sings, the narrative begins to break down, the words of the song intermingling with the characters' thoughts. Boylan, Molly's lover, arrives at the bar, a flash of confident, straw-hatted energy. He flirts with the barmaids, orders a drink, and then leaves, his carriage clattering away towards Eccles Street, towards the fateful meeting. Bloom watches him go. The music soars, and the pain, for a moment, is sharp and unbearable. The song of the Sirens is not just the girls' laughter. It is the music itself, which seduces Bloom into a state of aching, melancholic awareness. Boylan is gone. The tension should dissipate, but it doesn't. It settles into a dull, resonant ache. Stephen Dedalus's song reaches its climax, a wailing, poignant cry of loss. And as it does, Bloom's mind drifts. He remembers a night with Molly on Hoath Head, a moment of perfect, passionate union. The memory is triggered by the music, and the love he hears in the song is not a new, lustful love, but the profound, aching love he feels for his wife, a love that is now mixed with the bitter, metallic taste of betrayal. He takes a small piece of paper from his pocket, the letter from Martha Clifford, his secret admirer, and with the stub of a pencil, he writes a few words in reply. It is an act of quiet, almost passive defiance. A whisper against the roar of the song. Another song begins. This time, it is the patriotic rebel song, The Croppy Boy. A young tenor named Ben Dollard, a man of immense, ruined physique, booms out the tale of a young rebel who goes to confession, only to find his confessor is a disguised British soldier who sentences him to death. The song is a masterpiece of tragic irony, and the room is again captivated. For Bloom, the theme of a son betrayed and doomed is deeply personal. The song becomes another mirror, reflecting not a lover's betrayal, but the eternal loss of his own son, Rudy. The music, which had been a source of pain, is now a vessel for a different, deeper grief. He sits through it, absorbing it, letting the wave of sorrow wash over him. The song ends. The spell is broken. The noise of the bar, the clinking of glasses and the chatter, rushes back in to fill the emotional void. The men applaud. Stephen Dedalus, drained and triumphant, stands from the piano. Bloom, also drained, but by a different kind of ordeal, knows it is time to go. The music has done its work. It has soothed nothing, resolved nothing. It has simply held a mirror up to his pain, and in that reflection, he has found a kind of somber, artistic recognition. The sirens have sung, and he has listened. He was not dashed on the rocks. He was just profoundly, deeply saddened. He pays his bill and slips out the door, leaving the noise and the golden light behind him. The scene shifts from the musical melancholy of the Ormond Bar to one of the roughest, most menacing pubs in Dublin, the Den of Barney Kiernan. This is not a place of quiet reflection or gentle seduction. It is a cave, a lair, a drinking hole for some of the city's most bigoted and brutish citizens. The air is thick with pipe smoke, spilled porter, and an aggressive, performative masculinity. At the center of this cave sits the Cyclops himself, a figure known only as the Citizen. He is a massive, one-eyed, red-faced nationalist, a bloated embodiment of bigotry, grievance, and narrow-minded Irish patriotism. His one eye is not a source of depth or wisdom, but a blind, staring orb of pure, uncritical self-regard. Into this hostile environment walks Leopold Bloom. He is here to meet Martin Cunningham, to discuss the affairs of the late Paddy Dignam's family. But Cunningham is late and Bloom is forced to wait, an outsider, a stranger, in this temple of tribalism. He orders a cigar, a quiet, civilized gesture that immediately marks him as different. The men around him, led by the Citizen, are engaged in a toxic mixture of nostalgia for a mythical Irish past and venomous hatred for anything foreign. The conversation is a litany of complaints against the English, against the Jews, against anyone who doesn't fit their narrow, brutal definition of Irish. Bloom, a Jew, a man of peace and reason, listens in growing discomfort. The cave is closing in on him. The talk turns, inevitably, to the Jews. The Citizen, fueled by Porter and his own bottomless reservoir of hate, launches into a vicious anti-Semitic diatribe. The Jews, he claims, are swindlers, usurers, a plague on the Irish nation. He invokes a litany of stereotypes, his one eye glowing with righteous fury. The other men nod along, their own petty bigotries validated by the Cyclops' loudest voice. Bloom listens. His face is calm, but a quiet, heroic resolve is hardening within him. He is not a fighter, not a rhetorician. He is an ad man, a husband, a private man. But he has been pushed too far. He will not let this hatred pass unchallenged. He takes a breath and steps forward to speak. Bloom speaks. His voice is not loud, but it is clear. He defends his people, not with counter-aggression, but with reason and humanity. He mentions Mendelssohn, Marx, and Jesus Christ. Your God was a Jew, he says quietly. Christ was a Jew like me. The pub goes silent. The Cyclops, enraged by this quiet, factual defiance, roars back. A chaotic, shouting match erupts. The chapter's narrative style, which has been punctuated by absurd, epic parody asides throughout, now reaches a fever pitch. The confrontation is described in a mock-heroic style, as if it were a battle between gods. But at its heart, it is a simple, terrifying act of courage, one man, outnumbered and hated, standing up for his dignity. The confrontation comes to a head. The Citizen, blind with rage, can no longer tolerate Bloom's presence. He reaches for an Objecte biscuit tin and hurls it at Bloom's head. It is a moment of pure, impotent, comic violence. But to the narrator, this tin becomes a divine missile, a cosmic cataclysm. The narrative erupts into a parodic vision of the Day of Judgment, with the tin as a divine thunderbolt. The absurdity of the prose perfectly captures the absurdity of the hate. Bloom, saved by the timely arrival of Martin Cunningham, is bundled into a waiting carriage. As the horse pulls them away, Bloom, rising in his seat, a prophet of humanism against a cyclone of bigotry, calls out his final, triumphant message to the one-eyed monster: Mendelssohn was a Jew and Karl Marx and Mercadante and Spinoza. And the Savior was a Jew, and his father was a Jew. Your God. The carriage clatters away, leaving the Citizen and his cronies in a cloud of dust and frustration. The Cyclops is vanquished, not by a sword, but by the quiet, unshakable truth of a man's identity. The sun is setting over Dublin, and the day's light is beginning to fade. Bloom, breathless and shaken, is safe. He has faced the monster, the one-eyed embodiment of all the hatred in the world, and he has not been destroyed. He has spoken his truth. This is not a heroic victory in the traditional sense. It is a messy, absurd, and deeply human one. The wandering Jew has faced the one-eyed giant, and the giant, for all his rage, has been left with nothing but a broken biscuit tin. The journey continues. The summer evening had begun to fold the world in its gentle, violet embrace. The sun was setting over the sands of Sandymount Strand, painting the sky in hues of rose and fading gold. The air was warm and still. On the beach, a small group of people were enjoying the last hour of daylight, 3 young girls, their friend Gertie McDowell, and a few children playing at the edge of the retreating tide. And sitting a short distance away, on a rock, was a solitary man in dark clothes, Leopold Bloom. He was watching. The scene was one of quiet, everyday beauty, a picture postcard of Edwardian leisure. But the narrative voice that began to tell this story was not the voice of Joyce the modernist. It was a different voice, a borrowed voice, a deliberate and devastating pastiche of the sentimental, romantic fiction found in ladies' magazines. The world was about to be seen through a filter of gauze and wishful thinking. The narrative lens zooms in, and we are introduced to the heroine of this sentimental interlude, Gertie McDowell. She is the girl, with the sad eyes, a young woman who lives almost entirely in a world of fantasy, constructed from the cheap novels and fashion plates she devours. She is deeply conscious of her own beauty, her wavy hair, her slender hands, the delicate blush on her cheeks. She is a martyr to her own imagined refinement, trapped in a dull, respectable life with a drunken father and tedious friends. Everything about her is a performance, a desperate attempt to make her life conform to the romantic fiction she has internalized. The prose itself becomes a reflection of her mind, cliché-ridden, breathless, and filled with an aching, unnamed longing to be seen, to be desired, to be loved by a dark, brooding, poetic stranger. Gertie, with the practiced subtlety of her kind, becomes aware of the dark, brooding stranger watching her. It is Bloom. Her heart quickens. The romantic narrative she has constructed for her life demands a mysterious, melancholy lover, and Bloom, in his silence and solitude, fits the role perfectly. She performs for him, adjusting her dress, smoothing her hair, striking poses of maidenly grace and sadness. She sees not the middle-aged Jewish ad canvasser, the cuckolded husband, the grieving father. She sees a man of the world, a mysterious stranger with a dark, inscrutable face. The comedy, and the tragedy, is in the vast, unbridgeable gap between her romantic fiction and his mundane reality. They are 2 solitudes on a beach, each projecting a story onto the other that bears no relation to the truth. As the evening deepens, the air is filled with the scent of incense from a nearby church, a men's temperance retreat. The sound of the tantum ergo, a Latin hymn, drifts over the sand. This religious ritual blends seamlessly with Gertie's secular fantasy. For her, the distant chanting is the romantic soundtrack to her own silent communion with the stranger. And then, the climax of the evening arrives. A fireworks display begins over the water. A Roman candle shoots into the sky, exploding in a shower of green and gold stars. The children scream with delight. And it is in this moment of pyrotechnic ecstasy, as the rocket bursts, that Gertie, emboldened by the twilight and the music, leans back, looks directly at Bloom, and reveals her leg. What happens for Bloom is a solitary, physical, and entirely wordless release. The narrative stays firmly within the bounds of his consciousness, rendering the act not as a lewd conquest, but as a kind of sad, human, physiological event, a relief from the tensions of the day. There is no shared intimacy. The two are together but utterly separate, each trapped in their own private narrative. Charybdis believes she has ignited a grand, passionate romance. Bloom is simply a man who has found a moment of peace. As the fireworks fade and the sky grows dark, Charybdis stands up, a little unsteadily, and prepares to leave. She walks away, and Bloom notices for the first time that she has a limp, a physical imperfection that her romantic fantasies had so carefully hidden. She is no longer a goddess, but a wounded girl. The beach is now nearly empty. Bloom sits alone on his rock as the last light fades. The sentimental fog of the interlude has lifted, and his mind returns to its normal, analytical, melancholic clarity. He sees a piece of paper on the sand, the wrapping from the fireworks, and reads the printed words. He writes a brief message in the sand with a stick, a fleeting mark that the tide will soon erase. The entire episode, with its strange mixture of beauty, sadness, absurdity, and relief, recedes into the realm of memory. It was a moment of grace, but a strange, imperfect, profoundly human grace. The tide is coming in, ready to wash the beach clean of all the day's footprints, of Charybdis' performance, and of Bloom's temporary peace. The chapter begins not with a person, but with a chant. A thumping, rhythmic, incantatory drone that seems to rise from the very earth. We have left the quiet, sentimental beach and entered a space of primordial ritual. The language is the language of a fertility rite, a celebration of the body, of childbirth, of the endless, painful, bloody cycle of generation. 3 words are repeated like a drumbeat, Dishil Hollis Emus. We are going to Hollis Street, to the National Maternity Hospital. The very prose, a pastiche of pre-English fertility spells, tells us that we are leaving the modern world of the novel behind and entering a realm of ancient, biological time. The sun, the oxen of the title, are the forces of fecundity and life, worshipped by our ancestors and just as powerful today. We arrive at the hospital. The narrative voice shifts again, now mimicking the cadences of Anglo-Saxon alliterative verse. Inside, the screams of a woman in labor, Mina Purefoy, echo through the halls. She has been in labor for 3 days, a grueling, drawn-out battle of the body. Upstairs, life is being fought for. Downstairs, in a common room, a group of men are gathered. It is a bizarre, almost blasphemous tableau, medical students, Stephen Dedalus, and Leopold Bloom. They are drinking, smoking, and talking. They are here to wait, to distract themselves from the primal, female agony happening just above their heads. Bloom, who has come out of genuine concern for Mrs. Purefoy, is an outsider. He is sober, quiet, and profoundly uncomfortable with the crude, drunken, intellectual banter of the young men. He thinks of his own wife, of the night she gave birth to Rudy. The male intellect, Joyce seems to suggest, can do little in the face of this ancient, female reality but joke and drink and wait. The language continues its relentless, parodic journey through the history of English prose. As the men drink and the hours pass, the prose mimics the styles of Middle English, the Elizabethan era, the bombast of Sir Thomas Browne and John Milton. The talk is of fertility, of pregnancy, of monstrous births and divine creation. The young doctors, drunk on wine and their own cleverness, debate the morality of birth control and the nature of the soul. They are all intellect and no empathy. Meanwhile, upstairs, the real, physical, female body suffers. The distance between the learned, male discourse and the reality of Mina Purefoy's pain is the central, savage irony of the chapter. The men are trying to intellectualize a force that is fundamentally, terrifyingly, bodily. Bloom's mind, as always, wanders from the general to the specific and personal. The talk of birth and death inevitably leads him back to his lost son, Rudy. The memory is a quiet, devastating presence in the noisy room. He sees his son not as an infant, but as a wandering fairy, a boy of 11, dressed in a Eton suit, reading a book. He is the ghost of a future that never happened. This private, quiet grief is a stark, human counterpoint to the abstract, intellectual talk of the medical students. They talk about life. Bloom carries a death within him. His own personal oxen of the sun, his link to the future, was slaughtered 11 days after birth. All the fertility rituals in the world cannot bring him back. As the night wears on, the men become increasingly drunk and rowdy. The prose explodes into a chaotic, anarchic frenzy, mixing the voices of Dickens, Carlyle, and the vulgar slang of the street. They spill out of the hospital and head to Burke's pub, a wild, Dionysian procession of the male intellect at its most unhinged. Bloom, the sober, responsible, empathetic man, is left behind. He has a duty. He remains at the hospital until the news finally arrives: Mina Purefoy has given birth. The ordeal is over. Life has, painfully, miraculously, won. Bloom, the only one who stayed, the only one who truly cared, is there to receive the news. He has been a witness to the ancient, enduring miracle of birth. The chapter concludes with a final, dizzying stylistic flourish, a torrent of modern, polyglot, American-inflected slang, representing the newest birth of the language itself. The cycle is complete. From the primitive chant to the modern street, language, like life, is in a constant state of becoming. Bloom, having done his quiet duty, walks out into the grey Dublin morning. The storm has passed. The child is born. The oxen of the sun have done their work. And Bloom, the perpetual wanderer, the man of the body, has once again been a silent witness to the great, terrible, beautiful cycle of existence. The ghost of his own son remains, but so does the fragile, persistent fact of life. The scene is the night town district of Dublin, the city's red light quarter, at the witching hour. The gas lamps hiss and sputter, casting long, distorted, dancing shadows on the wet cobblestones. The air is thick with fog, cheap perfume, and the distant sound of a drunken song. We have left the rational, daylight world of the novel far behind. This is the realm of Circe, the Homeric sorceress who turned men into swine. Here, in the Mabbott Street entrance to Night Town, the deepest, darkest, most repressed desires and fears of the characters will be given monstrous, theatrical form. The narrative itself transforms. For the first and only time in the novel, the text is laid out like a dramatic script, with character names and stage directions. The unconscious mind has taken the stage. Stephen Dedalus and his friend Lynch have come to Night Town. They are drunk, filled with the intellectual bravado of the maternity hospital, and they are looking for a different kind of release. They enter Bella Cohen's brothel. The interior is a tawdry palace of gilt mirrors, red plush, and stale perfume. The music from a cracked pianola fills the air with a tinny, mechanical gaiety. It is here, surrounded by prostitutes and the detritus of the night, that the boundaries of reality begin to dissolve. The characters will now be forced to confront their own inner demons, which spring to life with a terrifying, theatrical vividness. The brothel is not just a place, it is a state of mind. For Stephen, it becomes a stage for a reckoning with his deepest guilt. Suddenly, the pianola stops. A hallucination erupts, summoned by Stephen's guilt-ridden mind. The door to the brothel flies open, and the ghost of his dead mother rises from the floor, her body rotting, her eyes hollow sockets, a green bile staining her lips. She calls out to him, a horrific parody of a mother's love, demanding he repent for the sin of refusing her dying wish. Stephen, in terror, cries out, "The corpse-etcher! Raw head and bloody bones!" But he cannot escape her. She is the embodiment of his Catholic guilt, the past he tried to fly past but never could. The moment is pure psychological horror, the ghost made real on the stage of Nighttown. Leopold Bloom, who has followed Stephen to Nighttown out of a quiet, paternal concern, is also engulfed by his own hallucinations. But his are not born of guilt. They are the expressions of his deepest, most secret desires. He is put on trial by a court of his own repressed fantasies. His accusers are a chorus of fantastical figures, the nymph from a picture over his bed, a talking bar of lemon soap, and the ghost of his own grandfather. They accuse him of being a womanly man, a masochist, a bisexually abnormal creature. The trial is a carnival of absurdity, a grotesque parade of everything Bloom has ever secretly thought or desired. It is a terrifying ordeal, but it is also, in its own way, a testament to his complex, multifaceted humanity. He is not a simple man. The climax of Bloom's hallucinations is his encounter with Bella Cohen, the madam of the brothel. In his mind, the powerful, masculine Bella transforms into Bello, a sadistic male figure. And Bloom, in this fantasy, transforms into a submissive, female creature, forced to be Bello's servant. The dialogue is a brutal, explicit exploration of gender, power, and masochistic desire. This is the new womanly man of the trial, fully realized. It is one of the most shocking and psychologically revealing passages in the entire novel. Bloom's subconscious is not just a place of gentle, quiet thoughts. It is a turbulent, chaotic sea of forbidden desires, a place where he can be, without judgment, everything he is not allowed to be in the daylight world of Dublin. The night of madness reaches its crescendo. Stephen, fleeing his mother's ghost, rushes out of the brothel and into the street. In a moment of drunken, grandiose, artistic fury, he swings his walking stick and shatters a gas lamp in the window of Bella Cohen's. He is, in his own mind, destroying the light of the old world, the church, and the state. But the reality is more prosaic, a broken window, a screaming madam, and the shrill whistle of the police. The scene devolves into a chaotic, drunken brawl. Bloom, ever the protector, steps in to manage the situation, to shield Stephen from the consequences of his own madness. The fantasy is over. The real world, with its policemen and its debts, is reasserting itself. The soldiers, enraged by Stephen's perceived insult, knock him to the ground. He lies there, unconscious, a failed Icarus on the filthy cobblestones of Nighttown. The great intellectual rebellion has ended in a simple, brutal act of physical violence. The crowd disperses, leaving him alone. But he is not alone. Bloom, who has been watching from the shadows, steps forward. He kneels beside the fallen young man and gazes down at him. And in this quiet, post-coital moment of exhaustion and tenderness, a final vision appears. Bloom sees, standing in the silent street, the ghost of his own dead son, Rudy. He is an 11-year-old boy, dressed in a Eton suit, reading a book, just as Bloom had imagined him. It is a vision of fragile, heartbreaking beauty. The father and the son, for a fleeting, ghostly instant, are reunited. The nightmare of Circe's realm has faded. The gas lamps of Night Town, with their hissing, lurid glare, are now a distant memory. In their place, a profound, bone-deep exhaustion has settled over everything. The prose itself slows down, becoming tired, rambling, and full of clichés. It is the language of a mind that has been awake for too long, a stylistic choice that mimics the slurred, repetitive speech of the sleep-deprived. Leopold Bloom has rescued Stephen Dedalus from his drunken brawl with the soldiers, and he now guides the pale, unsteady young man through the silent, pre-dawn streets of Dublin. They are two wandering souls, a father and a potential son, seeking shelter. Their destination is a humble, dusty cabman's shelter, a small, warm, unpretentious haven known as the Coffee Palace. The cabman's shelter is run by a man who is rumored to be the infamous Skin the Goat Fitzharris, a figure from the violent history of the Phoenix Park murders. But the legendary assassin is now just a tired, middle-aged man running a dingy coffee shop. The air inside is thick with the smell of cheap coffee, frying sausages, and stale tobacco smoke. The small room is a sanctuary for the city's flotsam and jetsam, a few homeless men, some exhausted workers, and, tonight, two extraordinary visitors. For Bloom, it is the Eumaeus of his Odyssey, the hut of the humble swineherd who, in Homer's epic, is the first to welcome the ragged king Odysseus home. Here, in this dusty, unglamorous refuge, the king and the prince can finally rest and talk. Bloom orders a cup of coffee and a bun for Stephen, who is pale and trembling. For himself, he orders a roll and a cup of what the shelter calls coffee. The paternal instinct is now in full bloom. He watches the young man with a mixture of concern and intellectual curiosity. Stephen is a puzzle to him, a brilliant, broken, self-destructive artist. Bloom, the practical man, the man of the body, sees a soul in desperate need of nourishment and grounding. He begins to talk, trying to connect, to offer some paternal, worldly advice. He tells Stephen about the dangers of the company he keeps, the wild, dissolute medical students, and of the importance of a steady life, of eating well, of avoiding unnecessary risk. Stephen listens, but his replies are distant, abstract, lost in a fog of scholastic philosophy. A third figure interrupts their quiet conversation. A weathered, red-bearded sailor shuffles into the shelter. He is a man who has clearly lived a life of adventure on the high seas. His name, he claims, is D.B. Murphy. And he is here to tell stories. He begins to regale the sparse audience with tales of his voyages, of exotic ports like Singapore and the Straits of Magellan, of tattooed cannibals and treacherous ice floes. He is a figure of immense, shabby romance, a parody of the wandering hero. He pulls out a postcard of his wife, and even claims, to the weary disbelief of the room, to have seen Odysseus himself, the mythical king of Ithaca. The wandering Jew and the wandering Greek are, for a moment, in the same dusty room. The sailor, having spun his yarns, eventually shuffles back out into the night, leaving behind a trail of tall tales and tobacco smoke. His departure allows Bloom and Stephen to return to their own, more important, conversation. The focus shifts from the mythic to the deeply personal. An unspoken bond begins to form between them. They are both exiles, both outsiders in their own city. They are both haunted by the ghosts of their past, Bloom by his dead son and his unfaithful wife, Stephen by his dead mother and his artistic failure. Bloom realizes that he cannot let this fragile, brilliant young man drift away into danger. He proposes an idea: they should go back to his house, to Eccles Street. Stephen, perhaps out of exhaustion or a flicker of trust, does not refuse. A quiet, momentous decision has been made. They pay their small bill and rise to leave. The shelter, with its clatter and its stories, recedes behind them. They step out into the city once more. But the city is no longer dark. The dawn is breaking over Dublin, a pale, silvery light spreading across the sky. The long, dark night, the night of the brothel, of the ghosts, of the funeral, of the song, is finally over. A single, heavy cart is making its morning rounds, driven by a man who looks like a character from a morality play. The air is cold and clean. The father and the son, the wanderer and the artist, stand together on the threshold of a new day. They are tired, but they are no longer alone. The most profound journey of the novel is about to reach its quiet, domestic climax. The journey from the cabman's shelter to Eccles Street was a quiet one, a shared pilgrimage through the sleeping city. Leopold Bloom and Stephen Dedalus, the prospective father and the potential son, walked side by side, their footsteps echoing on the empty cobblestones. They talked, but not of the soul's deep torments. They spoke of music, of the psychology of advertising, of the connection between sound and memory. Bloom, ever the educator, pointed out the constellations in the cold, clear night sky. He spoke of the vastness of the universe, of the parallax of stars, of the sheer, incomprehensible scale of existence. For a brief, suspended moment, the ad canvasser and the poet were just two men contemplating the infinite, their individual anxieties dwarfed, for a second, by the cosmos. Arriving at 7, Eccles Street, the cosmic perspective collided with a very domestic problem. Bloom, patting his pockets, realized he had forgotten his latchkey. The adventurer, the wanderer, the hero of the modern Odyssey, was locked out of his own home. The situation was absurd, a perfectly mundane deflation. He was forced to climb over the area railings, descend into the basement scullery, and enter his own house through the kitchen. Stephen, pale and exhausted, waited at the front door, a ghost of the intellectual fire he had been at the library. Bloom let him in, and the two men, the master of the house and his unexpected guest, entered the dark, silent, sleeping dwelling. The long night was almost over. Inside the kitchen, order was restored. The narrative voice, which had roamed through the chaotic and hallucinatory styles of the previous chapters, now settled into the cold, precise, and utterly factual language of a scientific catechism. It was a form of mental sanctuary, a retreat from emotion into logic. Question: what did Bloom do? Answer: he lit the gas lamp. Question: what did he then do? Answer: he prepared 2 cups of cocoa. Every action was broken down into its constituent parts, a ritual of domesticity described with the precision of a laboratory manual. The kettle was filled, the gas ignited, the powder measured, the water brought to a boil. This was Bloom's religion, the quiet, secular sacrament of making a hot drink for a guest. It was an act of profound, unspoken paternal care, a gift of warmth to a soul that had been wandering in the cold. They drank their cocoa. The catechism continued, its questions and answers bridging the vast and the minute. Bloom calculated the age difference between himself and Stephen. He considered their ethnic and linguistic similarities, the Hebrew and the Irish, 2 ancient, wandering, persecuted races, united over a cup of cocoa in a Dublin kitchen. He saw a future possibility, a fleeting hope of connection, of a son to replace the one he had lost. The thought was as detailed as an equation. Would Stephen stay? Could he be convinced? He proposed the idea, a room upstairs, a quiet place to write, an escape from the tower and the mockery of Mulligan. It was an offer of sanctuary, a father's hand reaching out across the void. But Stephen, still caught in his own labyrinth of intellectual pride and grief, gently, irrevocably, declined. The potential father and son would not be united tonight. The Catechism's cold logic could not solve the equation of the human heart. The refusal made, the ritual of hospitality moved towards its end. Bloom led Stephen out into the small back garden. It was the final, and perhaps the strangest, act of their encounter. Standing side by side in the darkness, surrounded by the sleeping plants, they urinated. The act, described with an almost clinical detachment, was a moment of profound, silent, and completely unromantic intimacy. They were two bodies, two organisms, performing the same necessary function under the same vast, indifferent cosmos. A shooting star arced silently across the sky. It was a small, fleeting blessing on their strange communion. Then, without another word, Stephen walked away into the dawn. The heavy front door shut with a quiet, final thud. The son had refused the father. The odyssey of the night was over. Alone in the silent house, Bloom prepared for bed. The Catechism followed him into his bedroom, cataloguing his actions with the same unemotional precision. He undressed, methodically folding his clothes. He performed his nightly ablutions, the washing of hands and face. Then, he emptied his pockets, laying out on the dresser the artifacts of the day, the bar of lemon soap, the wrapped Sweets of Sin novel, the morning's letter from Martha Clifford. Each object was a relic, a physical node in the vast, complex network of his day-long journey. He got into bed, the mattress sagging slightly. There, lying beside him, was the warm, living form of his wife, Molly. He considered the imprint of another man's body, of Blazes Boylan, who had lain there that very afternoon. The knowledge was a cold, hard, scientific fact in his mind, coexisting with a deep, resigned, and utterly human love. He kissed her. A final, quiet question. He settled into the bed, the events of the day receding like a tide. The Catechism dissolved. The last, cold, objective fact was the position of his body in the bed. And then, his mind, that restless, wandering, curious, and compassionate instrument, finally began to still. His thoughts drifted, became disjointed, personal. He was no longer a scientific observer of his own life. He was a tired man, a grieving father, a cuckolded husband, a wandering Jew, a hero of the everyday. He was Leopold Bloom, and he was, at last, going home. The final word of the chapter, where, is not just a question of geography. It is the ultimate, unanswerable question of a man locating himself in the universe, a single point of consciousness in the vast, dark, quiet night, finally at rest. The chapter is a single, unpunctuated, flowing river of thought. There are no full stops, no commas, no paragraphs. It is the mind of a woman, Molly Bloom, lying in her bed in the dark, drifting on the edge of sleep. Her thoughts do not follow a logical, linear path. They swirl and eddy, circling around the events of the day, the memories of a lifetime, the grievances and desires of a body and a soul. She is Penelope, the wife, the weaver, the center of the home to which the wandering Odysseus has finally returned. But she is no silent, patient, faithful weaver. She is loud, sensual, opinionated, and gloriously, defiantly alive. Her voice, in its raw, unmediated flow, is the final, life-affirming heartbeat of the novel, a countermelody to all the intellectual, male, and ordered systems of the day. Her thoughts first turn to her husband, Leopold. She thinks of his strange habits, his insistence on explaining things, his refusal to be jealous, his odd, quiet, infuriating politeness. He is a man, she reflects, who knows a lot about everything but understands nothing. She knows he's been with another woman, that morning, at the funeral. Or perhaps it's his typist, that Martha Clifford. She feels a flash of possessive anger, then lets it dissolve into a yawn. She is not a hypocrite. She has taken a lover, Blazes Boylan, and she knows Bloom knows. The arrangement is unspoken, a strange, modern, painful truce. She compares the two men, Boylan, with his brute, confident, animal sexuality, and Bloom, with his gentle, learned, and strangely moving tenderness. The body and the mind. She has chosen the body, for now, but her thoughts keep returning to the mind. A train whistles in the distance, a long, mournful sound that cuts through the silence of the bedroom. The sound pulls her memory back to another train, another time, years ago in Gibraltar, where she grew up as a young girl. She remembers the heat, the smell of the Mediterranean, the vibrant colors of the flowers, the feel of the sun on her skin. She was a girl then, a young woman full of life and desire, a flower of the mountain. She was kissed for the first time by a young officer, a memory of pure, sun-drenched sensuality. The thought of her youth, her beauty, her lost freedom, fills her with a powerful, aching nostalgia. The bed in Dublin is a long, long way from the Rock of Gibraltar. Her life has been a wandering journey, too, from the sun of the south to the grey of the north. Her thoughts drift back to the present, to the day that has just passed. She replays the scene with Boylan in her mind, the knock on the door, the confident way he strode into the house, the physical fact of the sex itself. The memory is explicit, unashamed, and purely physical. It was a good time, a release from the quiet, unspoken sadness of her marriage. But even as she recalls the act, her mind is already moving past it, to something else. The physical pleasure is a fact, a memory, but it does not consume her. Boylan has satisfied a need, but he has not touched her soul. She is already thinking of tomorrow, of her breakfast, of the concert tour. The affair is a chapter, not the whole book. The moon has shifted. The room is a little darker. And then, almost against her will, her thoughts turn to the deepest, most private and painful memory of all. Her son. Rudy. The boy who lived for 11 days and then died. The grief is still there, a raw, unfaded wound beneath the surface of her thoughts. She thinks of the tiny, fragile body, of the funeral, of the silence that fell over the house. She thinks of the name they gave him, and how it was never spoken again. The memory of her dead child is the dark, silent center around which all her other thoughts orbit. It is the unspoken reason for the distance between her and Leopold, the pain that she covers with the noise of affairs and the distraction of daily life. For a moment, the sensual, confident woman is just a grieving mother, alone in the dark. And then, as if the thought of death has pushed her back towards life, her mind makes its most powerful and unexpected turn. The memory of the pain of Rudy's death is replaced by another, more powerful memory, the day Leopold Bloom proposed to her. She remembers it vividly. It was on Howth Head, a beautiful, wild headland overlooking Dublin Bay. The sun was shining, the sea was blue, and she was young and full of hope. Bloom, her mountain flower, was not the quiet, cuckolded man of today. He was a passionate, ardent lover. And she remembers the exact words she said to him that day, the words that sealed their love. Her memory begins to build, a rising, rhythmic, life-affirming crescendo. This is not a denial of the pain or the infidelity, but a deeper, more fundamental affirmation. At the core of her being, she chose him. She chose love. She chose life. The memory builds. I put my arms around him, yes, and drew him down to me so he could feel my breasts all perfume, yes, and his heart was going like mad, and yes, I said yes, I will, yes. The final, ecstatic affirmation crashes over her like a wave. The word yes is repeated, a tidal, rhythmic, life-giving pulse. It is a word that embodies everything the novel has been about: the acceptance of the body, the embrace of experience, the triumph of the human spirit over the forces of despair, cynicism, and doubt. It is the final note of the symphony. The river of her consciousness flows into the vast, open sea of unconsciousness, and she falls asleep. The last word is not a full stop, but an opening. Yes. And so, we reach the end. Not with a bang, or a dramatic revelation, but with a single, quiet, life-affirming word, yes. The entire, sprawling, chaotic, brilliant universe of Ulysses has been a journey towards that single syllable. It is a word that accepts everything: the beauty and the filth, the love and the betrayal, the birth and the death, the sublime and the ridiculous. It is a word spoken not by a mythical hero, but by a woman lying in her bed in the dark, remembering the day she chose to love. The journey has been long, and I thank you, from the bottom of my heart, for walking every step of it with me. I am Melesias. This has been Ulysses, by James Joyce, as I have understood it. It is a book that asks everything of you, and gives back, in the end, the entire world. A single day in a single city, and yet, it contains everything. The taste of a grilled kidney, the sound of a tram, the pain of a funeral, the terror of a brothel, the ghost of a dead son, and the memory of a first kiss on a sun-drenched hill. It is a book that teaches us that the ordinary is sacred, that the body is not separate from the soul, and that the greatest adventure of all is the one that happens inside a single human mind. Thank you for listening. If this journey has moved you, or puzzled you, or simply made you look at a passing cloud with a little more wonder, then it has been worth it. Please subscribe, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that final, beautiful, yes. Until our next journey through the pages of a great book, may you find your own moments of quiet, epic grace in the ordinary streets of your own life.